We've all got dream kits. One kit that we wish a manufacturer would just make. Could be for lots of reasons. It could be that there's an old tooling that's just no longer available, or it could be that the old tooling is so bad it is just an unpleasant kit. And we're ramping into autumn, as you can tell, and that's, modelling season. I mean, every day is modelling season, but autumn, winter, definitely modelling vibes. So I thought we should have a look at the kits that we really wish there were. And I'll give you an example to start off with. I've always liked the PC9, and I'm sure many of you, wherever you are, have seen one, whether in your own Air Force or on a display somewhere. And yet, the PC9 has been an aircraft that has been massively underrepresented. There have been some specific manufacturers that have done limited runs in certain schemes, but we've never had a proper PC9 just kit that's accessible for everyone. And this was actually the original inspiration for this video, but for those of you who already know, you can date how long ago I thought about doing this video, because it was back when, well, just before I broke my rib, and then KP went out and said, hey, we're making a PC9, and I was like, okay, that's amazing, that is one of my dream kits. So I thought we'd just have a look at other dream kits. Now, obviously, this is dream kits to me, so it's not going to be for everyone. It's mostly going to be 1/72nd aircraft because, again, it's me. But I want to hear your favourite kits and what you really want to see. So let me know in the comments below, because I'm so excited to read it. And whilst you're there, make sure to hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel too. You can also join my Discord, where we can, share our modelling adventures together, and it's a really cool forum layout, so we can share each other's build logs and our finished builds as well. And it's just a really cozy community. So I guess let's get into what my dream model kits are that are missing, and some of them might surprise you. Number 5 is literally every Indian aircraft. Oh my god. I don't understand what it is, but for some reason, Indian aircraft in modelling just don't exist. There's obviously some limited run kits, but the fact that the Egyptian Helwan aircraft that was going to be their modern interceptor that only really got to prototype stage, that's had a relatively widespread model kit that you see occasionally at model shows that I've made myself, that you can see a video for. And yet India, which has had the Marut, it has had the Kiran, and most recently they've now got things like the Tejas, and yet there's not a single kit of this. The mind boggles. I've always really liked looking at indigenous aircraft from different countries, and I think that's what makes modelling so fun, is looking at all these unusual aircraft and subjects. That's why I do things like French February, to look at things that you don't always see. So the idea of doing Indian aircraft obviously is exciting to me, but alas, we are mainly resorting to 3D printed and resin kits, which, it's fine, but I understand why for a lot of people, whether concerns about health or whether it's just the skill set to make a resin kit, it's not the most accessible for some people. I've done one. I did my Mac trainer ages ago, and I've done the resin thing now, and I know I can do resin kits, but still just give us some plastic injection molded Indian aircraft, because as I say, we've got the Marut, we've got the Tejas, we've got the Kiran, we've got their new jet trainer that's begins with an S and it looks like a Hawk. We've got so many interesting aircraft, and they're so underrepresented. And they're Indian modelers. Come on, tell all the manufacturers what you want to see. Number 4, the Westland Gazelle. The Gazelle is a really pretty aircraft. It's an aircraft that I think most people in Britain know, and it's one that's actually been part of Airfix's core range for a very long time. But if you were to look for one now, you'll see that most of them are very old kits, going from between 15 all the way up to 50 quid, and it's a lot of money. This is not a big helicopter, it's that big. I've made one before. I made one in Yugoslavian markings. You can check it out on my website, link in below, because it's a cool aircraft. I love it. It's beautiful. It's just so of its time, and yet you can't get it anymore in a great way, and it's an outdated kit as well. So I don't really understand why no manufacturer has just made a new one, or at the very least cleaned up the molds and re-released the old one. I am praying this becomes a vintage classic from Airfix. please re-release this kit because it is so expensive now for no reason. I mean, along with the Lynx, but at least there are some manufacturers still releasing that, hence why it's not on the list today. But I just really wish that we had more love for the Gazelle, especially seeing as we literally can see it flying at air shows still in the UK, and presumably abroad as well. Number 3, okay, I'm cheating a little bit, this is a few aircraft. So it's the PZL I-22 Irida, the PZL 130 Orlik, and the Scorpion. The Scorpion's a bit of an outlier because it's sort of a prototype aircraft. There was a mock-up of it. I want to say I did taxi runs, but this is me just thinking off the top of my head and not doing the usual research I do. However, the other 2 aircraft did fly, and one of them actually still flies today. So the PZL I-22 was well, I guess the Warsaw Pac's answer to the Alpha Jet. It's a really sleek looking aircraft, but it had a lot of issues. As a result of that, it wasn't really successful, and although it entered active service, it was withdrawn relatively quickly. There's been a lot of articles, they're in Polish, but you can find them easily enough online, that, say they're going to start building it again and they're going to get it into active service. Not too confident that that's actually going to happen. Alas, we don't really have a model kit of this. There is a vacuum form one, and I tried to build it, but I just can't do vacuum form. I can't. It's so hard. As we say, the Scorpion's a prototype, so I understand that more. It's not one that's at super active service, but I think it's just a really interesting looking aircraft. And if the Su-47 can have several releases under different manufacturers, I definitely think the Scorpion can. Finally, the PZL 130 Orlik. Although it's not been the international success that I think PZL would have wanted, it's a beautiful aircraft. It was initially just sort of a propeller aircraft and then a turboprop aircraft, and it is the mount of the Orlik display team. I saw them for the first time in 1998 when I was a lot younger at Royal International Air Tattoo, of course. Since then, I have wanted to build one, and this was one that was in my rare kits video because, and you'll see that's a running theme in this video, because it's just an aircraft that has had really limited release, but not had anything widespread. And I think it's one that definitely deserves it. It's a really well-known trainer, at least to anyone who's a real big fan of aviation, because, I mean, it's a display team. They're always known by everyone. They are the face of aviation to whatever country they are from. And so it's kind of a shame that we haven't been able to see this, especially something so unusual, and I think the Orlik is a really sleek looking aircraft. Polish aviation and modelling has come a long way. Like the P11, that was always kind of an kit along with the Karis, the PZL-23, but we've got a lot better. There's new releases of both of those. There's been some other Polish aircraft that have been released, so fingers crossed we'll get one, but that's why it's on this list. Number 2, the CASA C101 Aviojet. As you all know, I am a huge display team fan. Like, they are just what got me into aviation, really. I remember seeing the Frecce Tricolori, the Patrouille de France, and Ukrainian Falcons when I was a lot younger, and that really cemented my love of aviation. One of the training aircraft of sort of the 80s to now was the CASA C101 Aviojet. This is a contemporary from Spain equivalent to, say, the Alpha Jet or the BAE Hawk. However, it's one that we don't really see in modelling. Now, resin kits we can easily get at this. In fact, I've got one of the resin kits upstairs, but the injection moulded kit is super rare. I mentioned there was going to be a bit of a theme that it was going to be in my rarest videos, and yeah, this is another one. You can actually see it in that video too, because I do have the injection molded one. It's not quite complete. I do need to buy some F-18 ejection seats for it, but it's such a beautiful aircraft. It's been used by Spain, Jordan, Honduras, and Chile. Why don't we have a model kit of this? I'm sure it would sell well. And it's the mount of the Spanish display team Patrulla Aguila, so it doesn't really make sense that we don't have one, especially when we have the Red Arrows, Frecce Tricolori, Patrouille de France, like all of them have their mounts in modelling, and yet the CASA C101 we don't. It's just such a shame. Presumably it's because we have really big British manufacturers in Airfix, we have sort of French and German with Revell and Hella, and we have Americans with, well, I guess what was Revell, Monogram, and all the other companies they have over there. But I don't really know off the top of my head like any huge Spanish manufacturers anymore. I know we had like Eschi that did a lot more like Italian and European things, and obviously Italeri still exists for, well, Italy, and they do a great job with that. That's why the MB326 and MB339 exist. But the Casa C101 seems to just be left. And it's such a shame because it's really unique, and it's an aircraft that is going to be going out of service relatively soon. So I really wish we just had a kit to remember this forever. Before we go any further, I wanted to do some honourable mentions before we go into number one. And one of them was inspired by this book, which I got at Stoke-on-Trent Model Show. I also did a video on that, so make sure to check it out. The reason that I say it's like honourable mentions is some of these are going to be so readily available, but I think could do with a reissue, or some of them I just know they're not realistic, which I guess we'll get onto the first one, which was the Armstrong Whitworth AW681, which is a transport aircraft of the last real project of Armstrong Whitworth, and it's a beautiful aircraft. Unfortunately, I know this has no chance of ever being a model kit because it's so niche, and also it would be so big, like A400 size, I think. Can't remember the dimensions of the real thing at the top of my head. I want to say it's somewhere between a C-17 and like an A400, but like haven't researched like I normally do. There's also some other aircraft I wanted to give honourable mentions to as well. The Hawker Siddeley Nimrod is one I just think could have a nice release, maybe a vintage classic from Airfix. I haven't heard any real complaints about the kit itself, so it's probably a fairly good moulding, and it's just an iconic aircraft. I loved seeing these at air shows when I was a kid, and it's such a shame that we don't have them flying anymore. Obviously there were a lot of issues that led to the cancellation of the Nimrod project and some controversy, but it would be really cool to see more of these accessible in modelling. This is why it's not on the list though, is because it is still easily accessible. It's just going up and fluctuating in price because it's one that's dependent on the second-hand market, and we all know what that can be like. Along a similar vein is the Avro Canada Arrow. I have made one of these previously, and I did it in a grey scheme, like a modern scheme, and it was really cool, but sadly it was a model kit that I no longer have anymore. I do have a new kit of it to make, and I'll probably make the exact same one I made because I don't love the prototype scheme, and I love the one I did, and I'll just weather it more, but this is also one that's relatively easy to get hold of, but is now really expensive. Anywhere between sort of 50 to like 120 pounds is what I've seen it for, which is insane. This is a kit that's like, should be 30 pound at most. We also have the BAC TSR2. This was an Airfix kit, came in sort of the proper TSR2 variant, and then we have an Anime, I think it's Stratos variant as well, which contained all the parts for the normal TSR2 anyway, it just wasn't like that on the boxing. And it's another one where like, it's still really accessible. I bought one recently for like 50 quid. They go up to, I've seen up to like £100 at model shows, which is mad. There's also a 48 scale one. However, all I've ever heard at any scale was it's not a good kit. So I guess having one that's like a nicer version and also not dependent on the second-hand market prices would also be nice. And then we also have things like the Saab 105 or the SK60. I mean, I may or may not be building one of these, as you can tell by the table here, and it's just not a great kit. I'm sorry, Marovox. I know you're such like a small manufacturer compared to the likes of Airfix, Revell, Hella, and Hasegawa, Tamiya, but you have to put so much filler on this thing, and every single build I've seen the same thing, and anyone who loves building these, I've always seen the same thing of, it is a pig of a kit, but I just love the aircraft and building it. So that's why it's also on my honourable mentions, is just upgrade it and make it a bit nicer, especially now this has gone out of service. Right guys, I guess it's time to go on to my number one most requested kit. Before we go there, make sure to subscribe to the channel and, well, leave a comment below of what you want released the most. But here we go. My number one most favourite kit to be released is going to be the Socko G4 Super Galab. Now, I have a couple of these. I think I have 2 or 3. They're really expensive. They can vary in price wildly. I've bought one very recently that was like, I think it was like £25-ish, and then postage internationally, which was probably about the same. And then I've bought them for like up to like £80, maybe more. They vary wildly because it is an extremely rare kit. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Socko G4 Super Galab also one that was in my top 5 rarest kits videos, is a training aircraft from Yugoslavia, or what was Yugoslavia. It was made by the Soko Corporation, who did things like the Galeb before it, and also did collaborations with IAR of Romania to do things like the Soko J22 Oreo, which was like sort of their version of a Jaguar, is how most people sort of view it. Now, this aircraft looks so much like a Hawk. I've read a lot that there's potential that there was influence and direct help in manufacturing something similar to a Hawk, because it looks so similar. And for an aircraft of that size, you would expect the kit to be like 15 to 30 pounds, not nearly 100 pounds. And this is why I really hope it's one we get, because it's such an interesting subject. The neutral states during the Cold War developed some really interesting aircraft, and we've mentioned one of them previously, like we've had India, we've had Egypt. I mean, they were all sort of aligned in one way or another, but some of them tried to develop it on their own to not be too dependent on another nation, and countries like Switzerland did the same. But with Yugoslavia, they had a really successful aviation industry. In fact, they were doing Novi Avion, which was going to be sort of like a Gripen, Rafale sort of style aircraft before, the collapse of Yugoslavia. So the G4 Galeb, Super Galeb, is still flying today with Serbia, and there are some with Myanmar. And prior to that, it was with a lot of different sort of nations within Yugoslavia following the collapse. So it'll be really interesting to see this, because there's a lot of really cool schemes, especially sort of some of the more recent Serbian ones. And of course, there was the Flying Stars display team of Yugoslavia, who had to stop flying due to the destruction of their aircraft during the war in Yugoslavia. The reason I picked this one as number 1 is because I actually think this one's the most likely to get made. And that's because Lataki have made the J22, which is one of the other Yugoslavian aircraft that previously I really wanted to be released in plastic, and now it is. I have one to build, I just need to get around to doing it. Given they've done the single seat and training version of the J22 Oreo, I'm really hoping they pick up the G4 Super Galeb as their next project after the current few they've got going on, because they did such a good job on that aircraft that I would love to see the G4, because as I mentioned in my rarest kits video, there's a lot of controversy about the molds for this getting split between different people after the sort of the fall of the company. UMO wants the Yugoslavia sort of divided into its separate countries, and now no one wants to be the one who gives up their molds, so now everyone's just releasing resin ones, and it's this whole thing. So now I just really hope that we get a new plastic one that looks great, then people can just learn about this really interesting subject. And I guess that goes for everything I've gone through today. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have done, make sure to hit the thumbs up to give the video a like, and leave a comment down below. What do you think of my list, and what would you like to see? Especially interested if it's not aircraft as well, because I don't know enough to know what is really needed in the modelling space there. If you want to get in touch further, you can also follow me on Instagram, and well, when I use it. And I also have my Discord, which is linked below as well, so make sure you join that so that you can talk to other modelling fans about your modelling adventures. That does it for me this time, and I will see you next time. Bye guys! We've all got dream kits. Model kits that we wish one manufacturer. Thank you to all of my channel members. As usual, shout out goes to the advanced kit level members, including Bob and Genevieve Albridge, David Barber, Taggers365, Jeff's Dioramas, Iron Duke, and my 2 longest subscribers, Explosive Water and Crazy Loja. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here today, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and well, there's a recommended video here just for you. So why don't we go and have a look together? Wherever you are, have a lovely day. Bye!